What's up, guys? Hope you had a decent Sunday. Today in Chicago, it was almost summer-esque, but let me tell you, we've had some wacky-ass weather. Anyhow, this is Randy Ritchie on behalf of Premier Pro Wrestling, and this is Jewish, Asian, and Pacific Island wrestlers you should know. Today, we're going to talk about Samoa Joe first, and then Dean Malenko. And let me just say, as far as both of those guys go, I don't think that it gets any better talent-wise. I worked with Joe at TNA Wrestling. I knew Joe through Phil Brooks or CM Punk, as I helped give Punk his start in the business. And that's where I first met Joe. Then I got to know Joe a little bit better when I was renting my ring out a handful of times to Ring of Honor Wrestling. And then after that, when I came to TNA, Joe had already been there. What you guys don't know is that when TNA started, on paper, Dixie Carter and any of her crew was not supposed to have any creative input. Well, Jerry Jarrett taught me the golden rule. What that means is no matter what it says on paper, the one with the gold rules. Yes, they were going to do a 12-month storyline right off the bat when TNA Wrestling was on Spike TV, and it was supposed to be a year program with Samoa Joe and AJ Styles, who TNA Wrestling was supposed to be built around in the first place. The rest just got goofy. Got to understand that AJ and Joe, this was the first time in their careers, because they were young guys, very talented young guys. Joe was getting paid to wrestle and getting paid decently, probably more than he had, up to that point in his young adult life or his adult life. And he was doing something that he loved, okay? They weren't getting paid bad, but they certainly weren't getting paid what they were worth. And thank God Joe figured that out and actually finally ended up getting paid what he was worth. But the way TNA Wrestling talked, and this was in the office where I was as TNA's production manager, things like this, the goofy King of the Mountain match, the six-sided ring, the electric steel cage, all those things were just thought of as not exactly storylines or how good they were going to be or how compelling they were going to be or how much the wrestling fan gave a shit about it. They thought of it as selling toys and accessories to those toy rings. That being said, one of my favorite things about Samoa Joe as a person was that him and AJ found out very quickly, because they got so frustrated working with a-holes, that they had to protect their brands. And when I went to work for TNA Wrestling, I hit the ground running, man. I did not come home for the first 4 months. In the first 4 months I was there, I finally got a 4-day vacation. I was off. It was a weekday. I was at the zoo with my youngest kid and my ex-wife, and I got a call from AJ saying me and Joe decided that we would call you and let you know this. The damn penalty box for the King of the Mountain match the year before I was there was just that. It was just a stupid gimmick. It was a Hollywood prop, okay? They had a very talented set designer, but he only knew how to design Hollywood sets. Nothing that was for wrestling, and that is apples and oranges. AJ asked if there was any way I could get the company to do something and put something into that stupid penalty box to make it functional for our purposes. Well, of course I couldn't get a dime out of them for that. Like I told you guys before, they didn't give a shit about it, and if you don't believe me, ask AJ or Joe. So I reached down deep into my bag of tricks, and I found a way to make one with things that we already had and get it made quickly for that pay-per-view. And at the end of the day, Joe and AJ saved that pay-per-view, being able to bump off that functional penalty box onto the announcer's table. You know, that was the biggest pop of that goofy match. And they knew this was goofy and they were doing the best that they could. But you got to remember, TNA Wrestling was incepted to have their spokespeople, their poster boys, to the actual term total nonstop action, to be Samoa Joe and AJ Styles. The other thing I love about Joe, he makes you believe. That's the attraction. Can you imagine if Joe would have gotten to WWE even 20 years earlier? The fact that he can still do what he can do at his age and size is just not normal. It is extraordinary, especially the fact that he works around so many injuries. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this. Joe's politics are very good. And even though things were frustrating at TNA, and I can't even tell you, maybe someday we'll go into more of that, he kept his composure and the man stayed professional. And you know what? When he went into that ring, Samoa Joe never phoned it in. He did an incredible job under very unsavory circumstances at TNA Wrestling. He'll always be aces with me, not just for that, but just for the type of person that he is. Oh, I forgot to tell you, did you know that at the age of 5, he was the youngest member of his family's Samoan dance troupe that actually showcased at the Olympics? That's big time, you know? And I can't imagine the pressure he was under at 5 years old. All right, guys, now we're going to talk about Dean Malenko. Unbelievable second-generation wrestler. His father was outstanding. But him and his father, I'm not saying that his father wasn't a great wrestler. But Boris Malenko was a better talker. He was a mouthpiece. Dean, as you know, as we all know, was all heart, all work. And imagine how much time he spent in between wrestling shows, inside of a ring, working, developing, practicing, innovating. But also imagine how much wrestling that he must have watched to be that damn technically sound. And I'll tell you, even Bryan Danielson has come out and said that growing up, Dean Malenko was his inspiration. I don't think there's been a more technically sound wrestler that I can think of in my lifetime, or anyway, or at least over the last 20 years as far as wrestling goes or the internet goes. Now, something that's little known to a lot of people, and I know this now because I went to go ahead and search for it. In the early to mid 90s, when WCW was doing such great business, something that people never talk about or think about, especially Bischoff, who really didn't care about the undercard or the opener because he's had his head so far up all these guys that he perceived as superstars' asses, was the undercard and the openings of particularly Nitro and also Thunder, but Nitro, because I was there for a lot of those too. The fact that that started with wrestling that the American wrestling fan had never seen before. I'm talking about the likes of Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, even Perry Saturn, the luchadors that came in, you know. While they were doing that, Vince was having the microphone work being done sometimes for 30 minutes with guys that didn't even want to be cutting promos, even though they had great names. Bret Hart went on record saying he always hated doing promos, specifically hated when he'd have to open the live program with a 20 to 40 minute promo. Well, that was going on, and over here you're getting action, international flavor, and wrestling moves and wrestling that people have never seen. And again, the core of that was Eddie Guerrero. These guys, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and Dean Malenko, They wrestled with each other internationally, and they were known very well in Mexico, and they were especially known well in Japan. They finally got the opportunity to go out there and showcase themselves to the American wrestling fan. I'm talking about the general population, not just the tape traders, okay? And it was something that people had never seen before. Therefore, why would they turn the channel to see some boring ass talking? Because it still says in the name of the company, wrestling. Now, Eddie came in, and he came in not with a guarantee, but he got over and earned said guarantee. The first guarantee was not a big guarantee. Not a big guarantee at all. And then he got more over. And then you can watch those matches. You can see how Eddie then worked to help get his friends over, particularly Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko. And they had some of the most outstanding matches that Nitro has ever had. And in addition to that, I think that he, with both guys, to help get his friends over and to also do things that were so innovative to the wrestling fan. I think he did best of 7 with both of those guys, which ensured all of them getting over, and that's how it's supposed to be done, okay? No, there was a time, and this is the story I was getting to, that WCW finally realized that they needed Dean Malenko, as well as Eddie, and Chris Benoit, of course. But they were going to offer him this guarantee because it was an outstanding guarantee that they weren't running that many house shows, but the ratings on television were good. So they offered them these guarantees, and just as they offered him those guarantees, Vince McMahon had been watching them. Vince McMahon obviously had been loving their work. He said, before you guys sign that big contract, will you please come to Connecticut and just hear me out? They went to Connecticut, and Vince told them, I'm not going to give you that kind of guarantee. Your downside guarantee will be a quarter of that guarantee, but what I'm going to give you is an opportunity to make more than that guarantee. It'll be based upon how many shows you work. Where you are on the card will be based on how you get over. You're going to get an opportunity to be properly marketed and merchandised. And at the end of the day, our pay-per-views kick ass, so you'll get a piece of that. At the time, all the old-timers, I'm talking about the generation before me, thought that they were idiots, including Dean Malenko. What's wrong with him? He knows better. He's second generation. Take the money. Well, they all went to Vince. They took that risk, and you know what? Every one of those guys landed on their feet and made 25% more than what was considered an insane guarantee at WCW. And the rest is history because the company shut down. By the time the company shut down and Vince bought it, Benoit, Eddie, and Dean Malenko were already over and established as not just wrestling stars. Now they were superstars. And if you notice, Vince never asked them to change their work. He knew what they were good at. He knew what their strengths were. He did everything he could to encourage them to stay true to their style. Not only did they stay true to their style, they kept doing what they've been doing all along, innovating and doing things that have never been done before inside a wrestling ring and getting over. Things I did not know. I did not know that Dean Malenko had a heart attack. He's too young for that, and I'm really sorry to hear it. The other thing I didn't know is that Dean has Parkinson's disease. I promise you, I don't know what the hell that's like. I knew somebody with Parkinson's, and it was very sad, but I can't believe, I just can't believe the shape he was in, and the same guy who was a piece of iron out there has got to deal with that now, as a middle-aged man. I personally am going to pray for him and his family during this fight or during that fight and hope for the best. And, I can't believe the fact that he's been through all he's been through worked so hard. After his career, he worked almost as long as an agent for WWE and was responsible for a lot of awesome angle storylines, pay-per-view moments, Raw moments, SmackDown moments, as he was from doing it himself inside the ring. But he's actually doing some part-time work now for AEW. It's funny to me that he never burned out from wrestling, even being a second generation. Last thing I want to say about Dean Malenko, and this is from personal. If you're into hip-hop, and yes, believe it or not, I am into hip-hop, and I particularly like Chicago hip-hop, and one of the standout stars for rap hip-hop in Chicago is Montana of 300. He has a song called Ice Cream Truck, and it popped me like a son of a bitch because it was long after Dean quit wrestling that song came out and became really widely heard. And he even mentions Iceman Dean Malenko in the song. So check it out. It's Montana of 300. The song is Ice Cream Truck. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I sure did. And again, if you're a praying person, throw some prayers out there for Dean Malenko because he's in a battle. All right, guys, this again was Jewish, Asian, and Pacific Island Wrestlers You Should Know, sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling. So be cool. Please like, subscribe, and you can see in the description there where you can support Premier Pro Wrestling.